I want to put out there a disclaimer too, because the process that these people go through can take years. So even though in a few videos people talk about doing it in 21 days and all that, often it's a longer process than that, because it depends on how expansive they are, of their consciousness is, because it really is about changing their vibrational state and their different energy bodies before they get to a level where they can actually, they're only nutrients from prana. We get our nutrients from prana, all of us, but also through the food that we eat. Another thing I want to say is, because some of these people have been criticized on things such as Wikipedia, and I learned this by watching a video by Dr. Sam Osmanagich, who found the pyramid in Bosnia, which is one of the largest pyramids in the world. And he said people think that Wikipedia is something that anyone can go into and change the information there. But what he said is, if you go up against people who do not want certain information out there, they will put things on Wikipedia to discredit you, and you can't go in there and change that information. So Jasmuheen, who I will be showing in some videos tonight, is one of those people. In the 1990s, Jasmuheen's from Australia, and then the early 1990s, she had reached a certain spiritual level where she could just live on prana. And so she wanted to share this with the world. And so the television program, the American television program, 60 Minutes, interviewed her. And so she did a very sincere interview with them, but they altered the information. So on Wikipedia, they discredit her, right? They say, oh, you know, she was faking it and all this sort of stuff, right? She was consuming food and all that, right? Another person, and I don't know if I'll be able to show the video tonight, but I will insert it, you know, or show it on our channel, is a nun in Germany in the 1920s, Therese Neumann, and she just lived on the little wafers you get during Mass for 35 years. She lived like that. And again, I had difficulties trying to find a really authentic video about her. And again, when you read stuff on Wikipedia about her, you can see, you know, people, you know, undermine the fact that she was living on prana. So keep that in mind as we go through this. And so how did I learn about this? Well, I read the book by Michael Talbot called The Holographic Universe. And in the book, he had a chapter about Therese Neumann. And he talked about her being a stigmatist, a person who would show the wounds of Christ on their hands and feet. They would materialize. Now, I've read different stories that periodically it would show up on their body, but in another reading that I found, or another resource, they said that she actually, it would show up weekly, right? So on her hands, on their feet. I have seen some videos where they show, you know, blood coming from her eyes. I do not know if they are authentic, so I didn't include those. But this is what he wrote about. He said, Therese Neumann, in addition to her stigmata, Neumann was also displayed in idia. That's a person who lives without food. The supernatural ability to live without food. Her idia began in 1923 when she transferred the throat disease of a young priest to her own body and subsisted solely on liquids for several years. Then in 1927, she gave up both food and water entirely. When the local bishop in Regensburg first learned of Neumann's fast, he sent a commission into her home to investigate. From July 14th to July 29th, 1927, and under the supervision of a medical doctor named Seidel, 4 nursing sisters scrutinized her every move. They watched her day and night, and the water she used for washing and rinsing her mouth was carefully measured and weighed. The sisters discovered several unusual things about Neumann. She never went to the bathroom, even though after a period of 6 weeks, she only had 1 bowel movement, and the excrement examined by a Dr. Reisman contained only a small amount of mucus and bile, but no traces of food. She also showed no signs of dehydration, even though the average person expels about 400 grams or 14 ounces of water daily in the air he or she exhales, and like amount through the pores. And her weight remained constant, although she lost nearly 9 pounds in blood during the weekly opening of her stigmata. Her weight returned to normal within a day or 2 later. For this video, I decided to include an excerpt from the Autobiography of a Yogi, which is about the life of Yogananda. Yogananda met Therese Neumann, and this is what he said in his book. Thank you to Rammurti Reed for his reading of the Autobiography of a Yogi.
In June 1935, Paramahansa Yogananda left New York aboard the ship the Europa. He and his party were headed to the British Isles and then on to Bavaria, for Yogananda wanted to make a special pilgrimage to Bavaria. This would be his only chance, he felt, to visit the great Catholic mystic, Therese Neumann. Several years earlier, Yogananda had become aware of the young Catholic girl, who was now in her mid-30s. She had many qualities similar to those he had seen in saints in India during his time growing up there. As always, whether in East or West, Yogananda was eager to meet a saint. He was filled with joy as their little party entered the quaint village where Therese lived. The messenger soon appeared with her reply. They are words that the devotees of Yogananda have heard and treasured many times. Though the bishop has asked me to see no one without his permission, I will receive the man of God from India. Deeply touched at these words, Yogananda followed Dr. Wirtz upstairs to a sitting room. Therese entered immediately, radiating an aura of peace and of joy. She wore a black gown with a spotless white headdress. Although her age was 37 at this time, she appeared much younger, possessing indeed a childlike freshness and charm. Healthy, well-formed, rosy-cheeked, and cheerful, this is the saint that does not eat? Therese greeted Yogananda with a very gentle handshake. They both beamed in silent communion, each knowing the other to be a true lover of God. Dr. Wirtz offered to translate as they seated themselves, looking forward to an exchange with each other. "Don't you eat anything?" Yogananda wanted to hear the answer from her own lips. "No, except a consecrated rice flour wafer once every morning at 6 o'clock. "And how large is that wafer?" "Oh, it is paper thin, the size of a small coin. I take it for sacramental reasons. If it is not consecrated, I am unable to swallow it." "Well, certainly you could not have lived on that for 12 whole years. "I live by God's light." How simple her reply. How yogic a reply it was. I see you realize that energy flows to your body from the ether, the sun, the air. A swift smile broke over her face. I am so happy to know that you understand how I live. Your sacred life is a daily demonstration of the truth uttered by Christ, Yogananda said. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. And again, she showed joy at the Master's explanation. It is so. Indeed, it is so. One of the reasons I am here on earth today is to prove that man can live by God's invisible light and not by food only. And can you teach others how to live without food? Therese appeared a trifle shocked. Oh, I cannot do that. God does not wish it. Yogananda then gazed down at her hands, and Therese showed him a little square, freshly healed wound on each of her palms. And on the back of each hand, she pointed out a smaller, crescent-shaped wound, freshly healed. Each wound went straight through the hand. The saint told Master something of her weekly trances. As a helpless onlooker, I just observed the whole passion of Christ. Yogananda learned that each week, from Thursday midnight until Friday afternoon at 1 o'clock, her wounds would open and bleed. Each week, she would lose 10 pounds from her ordinary 121-pound weight. Suffering intensely in her sympathetic love, Therese yet looked forward joyously to these weekly visions of her Lord. Yogananda realized at once that her strange life was intended by God to reassure all Christians of the historical authenticity of Jesus' life and crucifixion as it was recorded in the New Testament, and to dramatically display the ever-living bond between the Galilean Master and his devotees.